Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you've been having a great time so far. I just want to say, if you're clicking on the video, I greatly appreciate it. Hopefully, you'd consider a like, comment, and subscribe to let you know whenever I make more videos like this or other things. And I'm always on the lookout for new ideas to drive people to watch. Of course, be also sure to follow me on Twitter, formerly known as X. It is probably X, formerly known as Twitter, sorry about that, is probably one of the best ways to let me know about anything. And I also try to make sure I'm only interacting with people that are interesting. So hopefully that's a great idea. With that in mind, I hope that I can provide you with a pleasant experience today. Let's get right into it. All right. So go. Now everything's coming through correct. All right. So we're going to go on ahead and get started. And I think today, something I was going to talk about while we're getting loaded up here was actually something not quite ironic, but I don't quite know what the word would be. But I guess today's talking topic is talking. So my thoughts on talking and what it's like, what it has been like to talk to very few people as someone who normally doesn't talk at all. Game? Oh. These have been looted already, perhaps? Maybe, possibly. Not unheard of. Anyway, I think what we're gonna do a little bit of gold hoarding while we figure out some topics of discussion. Go ahead and get this started. We probably just want to do some buried treasure. For this first one, we'll go on ahead and dive, and then after that, we'll kind of figure it out from there. Yes, ding ding. So anyway, yes. Thoughts on talking and how... I'm sure that's a little bit of a strange topic, but I felt like it's something I wanted to talk about as I've kind of done a little bit more social interaction, a little bit more video making. Stuff that I have not been the most familiar with prior. And kind of how that's been reflected in some of the content I've made and in some of the content I've seen. Oh yeah. So I guess for starters, if you've happened to see it, I've been using Twitter a little bit to talk about some of my videos and live streams and things like that. To a small amount of people seeing it, saying things. I don't seem to be getting notified of very much going on, and I assume that's because there's not very much happening. Which is okay. I believe I said in the previous entry in this. That I wasn't necessarily looking... Thank you, game. I wasn't necessarily looking for any sort of, like, massive fame or success, like might be typical of people who are trying to do this for a job. I'm certainly not one to be built for infamy of any kind. And interaction is not necessarily something that I think about too much. So it's a little bit of a shell shock, in a way. Culture shock is probably more like it. To be incentivized to interact on the various forms of social media, primarily going to be Twitter. I don't really think there's been much value in branching out. You might have seen that I've removed the Blue Sky handle because I just don't check it. I don't care. It's boring. So, interacting on Twitter at all, something I've only really done since starting to make videos and go live. And it seems like every time I do, there's not much going on what I have to say, which makes sense. I'm probably not the most active person in terms of both how much I say and what I have to say. It definitely seems like people are really looking for drama, for something spicy. I can't necessarily say that I blame them, right? I understand. Silence. I'm trying to make a video. So I certainly understand that I might be doing things a little bit differently than average. And that's A-okay. But even so, it's weird. Because prior to making these videos and talking about it on the internet and all that, regardless of if people are talking about what I'm saying or not, I just did not ever really feel the need to try and share anything like that. I didn't feel like I wanted to really reach out through Twitter or any other social media website. And I think part of it's just, I would say I'm pretty introverted. I don't really talk about myself or the things I'm doing. So I've just never really felt a need to share with the public at large. Really, to a degree, I still don't, but I get the feeling that not saying anything is not really the way to go, right? It's not necessarily that I'm desperate for any sort of success or attention, but it doesn't seem right to just not reach for the attention or anything like that, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't. But I assure you in my mind it does. So I bring this up because I've got friends who do engage a lot more with the internet and the society at large. And lately, they've been getting into some points of discussion where they've been, I guess, targeted to a degree, kind of harassed, by people for an opinion, which, you know, people are going to do what they're going to do. But to me, it seems so unfathomable to make the kind of statements that these people have made to this other person for sharing this opinion. But it also seems kind of strange to me to really even bring up the opinion in the first place. And that is certainly not to support the people that is certainly not to support the people who engage in any kind of harassment or anything like that. That is pretty vile, one way or another. It's pretty awful to do things like, you know, tell people to end themselves, or whatever I have to say for YouTube purposes. I've also just seen people have some pretty garbage takes in response, right? Like, I may or may not agree with the original topic, but I definitely don't agree with some of the people making even worse responses. And I just find it so weird that I, as someone who I think has some pretty reasonable takes and can think about what I'm saying, doesn't really want to talk too much, doesn't share too much, even though I would say I'm, like, of reasonably sound opinions. Meanwhile, people who clearly are reading the words in someone's opinion and then parroting them back in, like, the worst possible way are willing to post paragraphs upon paragraphs about nothing. I just find that strange. I don't know if that's an extrovert thing, but I feel like it isn't. Or at the very least, it's hard for me to be sure. Because they don't really seem to me like extrovert-type people. I think the common meme is, you know, there's the terminally online group who are looking for, like, any form of validation. And I really don't know to what degree they would classify as introverts or extroverts, or really if there's even a relation. But it does seem like some of them come up with the most vile takes you've ever heard, and then have the audacity to tell someone else to end themselves, right? Or just have some other just awful way of speaking. It really is strange. And that much I am very confident in, right? One way or another, it's not healthy. And I'm just not even sure really how to work with it. But, part of the reason why I bring that up is because I don't know if any of you have seen my other videos and noticed how much I talk. That's not necessarily just a videos thing. I just don't talk very much at all. And for the most part, also haven't really felt the need to. So, kind of sitting back and listening to all of that going down has just been a weird experience. Especially if you consider that I generally don't interact with Twitter otherwise. So I'm seeing a lot of this secondhand. And it's a little fascinating. Now, I'm probably not going to do much with it. I mean, like many things, it will pass along in time. I'm not thinking that this is going to be any bigger deal than it is. But it still feels weird, and it's very hard for me to properly talk about in a conversation. Partially because I don't care for conversations very much. It makes me think about a couple times now. There's people that want to talk to me, but I don't necessarily want to talk too much. So they will like either send me like text messages or call me or just talk to me in person. Kind of depends on the situation. And I'll just respond with, you know, the yep, sure, of course, I got you. Just all this very small, generic talk, right? Effectively small talk. Which I'm not the biggest fan of, but I also just don't really feel like speaking about anything. And yet people still want to talk to me sometimes. So I just kind of let them talk. I let them go on. Because there's no real harm in it. It does make me wonder how... It actually doesn't make me wonder. I don't particularly wonder about it. That's not the right word. It is a little bit interesting that people are so comfortable to keep talking about whatever's on their mind, while I just don't even... I could probably get away with just not saying a word if I could be allowed to do so. Fortunately, there are parts of my job I am obliged to speak. I obviously probably would not be doing a whole lot of video making or streaming if I was just completely mute. But even so, moving on from there. It baffles me. I guess this is kind of a weird segue on that. We had to interact with an individual at my job that was getting terminated. Right? I'm not going to say a whole lot more about it, but had to do it in a way where he wasn't in person, and he was just talking. He was just talking and talking and talking and going in circles. He would say the same things over and over and over, and what could probably have been summed up in about 2 minutes ends up taking like 15. Because he's just going on and on and on and on. And it's part of why I wanted to make a video talking about talking anyway. Because I just don't really know how people get there, right? I don't know what kind of a mindset you have to be so comfortable just talking effectively into the void forever. And I couldn't help but wonder how that compares to, like, making a YouTube video. Because I am even now not talking to anybody in particular. I wouldn't even really say I'm talking at the camera. The camera's over here, but I'm walking over here because I'm playing a game, so maybe it's keeping me distracted. But it just seems strange there to not be a conversation and keep talking. Like, it seems weird to me for a 15-minute conversation to be dominated by one person for 14 and a half minutes. And just don't know if it's like something that they could be conscious of, like they're thinking about that as something that they're doing. I don't know if it's just a subconscious activity, like maybe they're not thinking about it at all, like they just go, right? There's been that whole debate about, you know, being able to see like the apple in your mind and, you know, what degree of vision you have of the apple. Can you see it in color? Is it rotating? Is it glistening? Or is it just like a black and white apple? Stuff like that. And the way that comes back to talking is like, are these thoughts that are going through someone's head as they're just kind of going and going and going? Is this a conscious stream of thought? Even if it's a text, right? Even if it's a twit longer or a video essay or something where they just keep going for some reason, then do they even process what they're saying and why they're saying it? Are they capable of remembering the things they have said and haven't said? It makes me wonder a little bit about that whole, like, there's been a couple of different, like, mixed theories, you know, like the dead internet theory, the simulation theory, all that fun stuff, right? All those fun conspiracy theories that are, like, silly and interesting, but in reality aren't reasonably real. But it does make me wonder the people that just go. How much of that is conscious thought? And how much of that is just, like, drivel? That they're just saying because they don't know how to not say it, I guess is the best way to put it. Especially when you consider the length of time that they do so. Like, even now, this is about 23 minutes in to this video, and I can already kind of feel my, throat starting to hurt a little bit. Just from this little bit of talking we've been doing. And I don't know if that's normal. Probably not. But I'm also fairly certain I am talking more now than I have for most of the day prior. So, yeah, even this little bit of discussion, really not even a discussion, really this little bit of me speaking at a camera is an awful lot. So it intrigues me that people can talk so much and spend so much breath while saying nothing. And it makes me really wonder where those brain cells have gone. But enough on that, and on people just randomly saying nothing, effectively. Oh. Alright, well. So much for that. Time for things to get a little weird. Oh god, I have no cannonballs. Let's do something about that. Grab my stuff. It's kraken time! Let's get freaky! We're getting weird. I hope you're ready for it. I can't believe this. How dare you? I am trying to make a peaceful video. What the heck? Oh. What on earth is happening? Wow. I have never seen this before. I might be about to die. I think I am. Well, I hope you weren't afraid of this, because I sure have no idea what's happening. I don't even know what to do about it. I guess I'm supposed to, like, stab it? Oh, that sucks. I might be about to die. Or, my boat might be about to sink is what's actually happening here. Well, I guess, while we're waiting for that, yeah, as far as making these videos, I'm kind of coming up with ways to talk. Oh dear. Ways to talk, ways to engage, and basically do stuff that I'm not very proficient with. Because talking just is not part of my regular engaging tactic. I'm pretty, reserved most of the time. I just don't really engage with people very much. I've tried to get a little bit better about, you know, if I'm going to scroll through Twitter, I might as well like some stuff, right? I might as well act like I have a personality. But even so, I probably don't say nearly as much as I should. Or maybe I'm spamming, right? I don't think I really do anything that classifies as spamming, but it is possible that I actually am saying too much without properly going over what I mean is one way to think of it. Nerd? Stop yelling at me. I'm just trying to vibe, and you're out here messing with my ship like a monster. I guess you are. I'm just trying to chill and make a video. So yeah, I'm just not really used to talking for a lot about anything. I definitely tend to let other people talk more. Altogether. That's just part of it, right? I just tend to let other people do the talking. And that seems to be what people are okay with. For some reason, people seem to like me. And, you know, I'm not unthankful for that. I'm not ungrateful. But it's definitely hard for me to tell what in particular they like about me. And I'm wondering if part of it is because I very much am willing to let people be themselves and talk about themselves. It's come to my attention that people really like talking about themselves most of the time. Something which I typically am not really. Oh, nope, we got our co-captain for a little bit before she decides she's had enough. Which could be any amount of time. But anyway. Yeah, I just don't really engage a whole lot, and so I guess that's part of what doing these videos is for. Is a way to engage without being constrained by things such as the character limit on things like Twitter, or doing so in a way that people will just respond to me annoyingly, I guess. It's just been a thing to do to kind of help me branch out a little more, I guess, right? To learn talking, to learn interacting. It's probably not something people typically need to do. So it feels a little weird for me to be in that position. But it also puts me in this weird spot where, because I don't necessarily want to talk to people, and I don't want to have the conversations, I'm not necessarily looking for, like, help. Which is not to say that I need help. I think what I'm doing is what I want to do. And that's really all there is to it. But it is a little bit harder to put into words what it is that I want to do or why. And it might be for someone who's a little bit more socially inclined than I am. As far as internet interactions go, without feeling a desire to do so, it makes it very hard to remember to do. Or to even, like, try and be outgoing about it. I would definitely just as soon let nope. It's no fun. I would just as soon be a fly on the wall for people's conversations than actually partake in the conversation. Even if it gives off the idea that I'm just a zero personality weirdo, which I might be. That's unrelated, sort of. Which I guess people might figure out after talking. So perhaps that's why I don't talk, or perhaps I don't talk and that's what makes it. Or perhaps I'm overthinking it, or underthinking it. Perhaps even I simply did not drink enough water and now feel my throat being parched. There are a lot of player ships here. I need to get away. Am I supposed to be going there? Oh, anyway. Oh, hey, the fire ship. Cool. But anyway. I suppose I would be missing out on the topic of talking if I didn't also talk a little bit about kind of the state of, like, the modern dating scene, which, you know, I'm sure everybody has heard about 5 different ways and has come from several different sources, right? Everyone's got their own take. But I've had to do a lot of reworking my thought patterns, speech patterns, to even make a discussion a possibility. And it's weird. I feel like people have assumed that men just don't talk on, like, dating apps and all that, right? Like, they get the ghosts and, like, small responses or anything, right? Just like, you know, just like everybody's experience, right? It's just bad, right? Short and sweet of that one is it's just a bad experience all around. It sucks for everybody. But it definitely feels like I have had to, I think I've described it as pulling teeth to try and get people to talk. Which kind of blows, not gonna lie. Turns out, I've put in the effort to try and talk more. And try and be the person who kind of leads conversations. Where applicable, right? I try to make sure that there's plenty of time to talk for everybody. And anything that I say is just a relatively small part of the conversation, right? We want to make sure that any discussion we're having is a multi-way conversation, right? I'm not trying to fully dominate it, nor am I trying to give them full control over it. And I've decided that kind of blows. I kind of hate it, actually. I've definitely kind of had to spend a lot of brain cells thinking about what I'm saying, how I'm going to say it, is it too much, is it too little, bouncing back and forth between is it going to frighten someone away, which just doesn't feel natural. Me, anyway. And maybe that's just because I am not a talker. So, suddenly being put in this position where I'm supposed to talk is not very fun. Let's do it. Looks like it's still moving slowly. Creepers. And I don't necessarily know that there's a solution to that. Someone has to lead the conversation. One way or another. And it's hard to want to put that that onus, I guess, right? ONUS, the onus of making conversation on other people, which is, I guess, another reason why I've been trying to work on branching out a little bit. Because I'm fairly certain that that's not really the way it's supposed to be. A good conversation should be something kind of natural. And you shouldn't really have to try, right? I think a lot of people talk about, you know, people aren't trying hard enough and not saying enough and all that fun nonsense. But, I find myself wondering how much people are supposed to try at all. Which, I guess, reaches a little bit back into the people who just go on and on and on about nothing. And how that's just not something I can really fathom doing. Even this is kind of like trying to think of stuff that I haven't already said. I'm going ahead and grab that stuff. Because most of the time when I'm talking about anything, I'm usually done with my conversation in like 10 minutes or less. I do not talk for very long, so... And obviously, no, I think in the... If you've watched the previous video of this type, then I'm not trying to force any topics of conversation or anything like that, but I also don't necessarily want to just say nothing and assume that's good enough, right? I want to be able to expand on my thoughts a little. That is part of the objective. So it's just been a little weird. A little unfun, really. I definitely just am not much of a converser. I think that's okay. It just, but there's some situations where I might struggle because I need someone else to kind of take up the mantle of talking for basically no reason other than I just don't talk, right? It's not that I'm necessarily unwilling to talk to people. It's just that I don't talk. I don't really have a whole lot to say. I don't particularly desire to say anything. So sometimes I kind of need other people to be able to fill the void of silence. While I just sit there awkwardly and kind of make the super straight face emoji. I don't actually know the name of it. And I just listen. Which is really hard to do when other people don't talk. But anyway, that's probably enough on that in particular, because that's not particularly a fun topic for anybody, I don't think, right? That's probably not people's favorite thing to think about. So, we'll leave that one there, but something else to think about as far as talking is how hard it is to come up with things to talk about when you're trying to have a conversation, at least from my experience. Because I have probably mentioned it before, I would say I am pretty heavily introverted on several fronts. I just really don't talk about myself very much. So when people ask me things about myself, I honestly just, like, don't even know what to say. I just have no clue what to even start with. There's been people that have been pulling me out of that shell, right? I guess they've been cracking me open like a walnut. But even then, it's a very short description. Doesn't really say too much about what I did, other than give like a vague idea. I think that's okay. I guess something I've not really said while I've been going on with this is, I guess that's really the next part of conversation, the next topic, is that I've been trying to branch out a little bit and talk a little more because I feel like I'm supposed to. I am surrounded by people who love to talk, and it makes it very difficult to not talk. Very hard to do that. But I definitely don't think it's a bad thing to not want to talk. I think it's a pretty typical thing that maybe people just aren't very accustomed to. Right, we are social creatures. Talking is one of the, like, premier ways for people to engage with one another. So I think people are used to being able to talk and wanting to talk. But I certainly don't see any problem with not wanting to talk. And if I feasibly felt that I could do so, I probably just wouldn't. And I think that scares some people. And I say that because I think some people I care about would be very scared to hear that. They would instantly assume the worst. Maybe fear for my life if they heard it. Probably because in the same way that I can hardly fathom people who can talk for hours about literally nothing and just repeat the same things over and over again, I could live with not saying anything about what I've had going on for months. Only ever really speaking up if something extremely important happened. Which I think is an interesting dynamic. Perhaps not the most fun dynamic, but interesting. It does create this weird sort of scenario where when you think about boundaries and kind of like establishing yourself and like how much you're willing to do, how much you're not willing to do, you can only do so much to tell people I don't want to talk before they either start taking it personal and assume that it's because you don't want to talk to them, or that they just give up trying to talk to you altogether, which is weird, because it's not that I don't ever want to talk to people ever for any reason. It is definitely that I have not really come across very much that I want to say. I want to hear what's going on with other people, but I don't typically have or want anything going on with me. And I definitely think that can be kind of hard to operate for some people. I think they have a hard time hearing that and understanding that people actually might not necessarily think anything bad about anything you're saying or whatever. They might actually, factually, just not really want to talk about very much. And just chill. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with them, or that there's some secret that they're hiding, or whatever. They just don't want to talk. Vibing. Which is a little weird. Which I understand. I try to be very aware of the fact that I am by no means a snowflake, but probably do not operate on the same social wavelength that a handful of people do on the norm. Oh dear. Lordy, lordy. So anyway, yeah, it's a weird conundrum to try and have those boundaries there, just because of how harsh the boundary is, as well as the fact that when people talk a lot, I think it's assumed that they're fine. When people don't talk at all, it's assumed that they're not fine. Right? It means there's an issue. You know, I might not necessarily have an issue, right? I'm probably okay. I'm pretty much more okay than a lot of people who might be in my position. Right? I would say I'm doing just fine. There's definitely people who talk a lot more than me who are not fine. And I definitely feel bad for them. But it's just another sign that, like, kind of looking for the wrong signs, whether or not someone is well or unwell, is just how much they talk. Especially when you consider that, like, I've just never really talked a lot for, like, any reason. So it's not like me not talking is out of the ordinary, other than the fact that it's different. I do feel it pertinent to mention I'm certainly not upset at anybody who is concerned for me because I don't talk. Right, obviously, you know, it's nice to have people care and want to be okay and everything, but it just feels relevant that it's so odd to me. Not 100% sure what to do. I guess really the main thing is that I'm going to just kind of leave it. Far from the worst thing. It's really not even necessarily a bad thing. It just seemed interesting. These things are going off like crazy. Let's go ahead and stop by this one. Here, maybe? No. This is annoying. Oh. Here? There we go. Found it. Getting real tired of these guys. Turn to the... Thought I could hear. Might be some... So anyway, I think that's a lot of what I'm going to be saying on this topic for now. Just because I'm not very much of a talker, but also because it's hard for me to have a whole lot to talk about on this. At least right now. There might be some space to expand on it further. But I also think that, you know, going in circles is not really going to help anybody. So that'll probably do it for today. Grab these real quick. I'm going to get bit by my cat because she gives me these, you know, little love bites, right? You know, like a proper menace to society. Let me know that she is ready for more attention. And, you know, I, as the proper slave that I am going to give it to her without question. So, on that note, greatly appreciate you out doing, and I certainly hope that you'll be around for another one. Very much. Have a great night.